Welcome to this short guide to assist you as you plan, deliver and administer controlled assessment for the WJC EduCast Level 3 Applied Criminology course. My name is Erin Roberts and I'm the Subject Officer for the internally assessed units for Criminology. This presentation is split into 4 short sections. Each presents the basic rules and regulations surrounding the administration of the controlled assessment units. Please use this video as a training tool within your departments and to facilitate discussions at your centre as to how best to approach the controlled assessment units during this academic year. Logistical possibilities will of course vary from centre to centre. Conducting controlled assessment from 2019. Section 1, General Guidance. This section of text is taken directly from the document titled WJC Guidance on Conducting Controlled Assessments. This document can be found in the Exams Officer section of the WJC and EduCast websites and contains guidance on all aspects of the administration of WJC controlled assessment units. It can be accessed by clicking on the link on this page. The document begins by noting the underlying principles behind controlled assessment. The first is to ensure that all candidates taking a specific qualification spend approximately the same amount of time on their assignments. This is of course 8 hours in the case of criminology. The document begins by noting the underlying principles behind controlled assessment. The first is to ensure that all candidates taking a specific qualification spend approximately the same amount of time on their assignments. This is of course 8 hours in the case of both criminology internally assessed units. The guidance also mentions that controlled assessment is also designed to prevent third parties from providing inappropriate levels of guidance and input during the controlled assessment sessions. Controls on the notes and resources that can be taken into the controlled assessment environment also mitigates concerns about plagiarism and improves the reliability and validity of results. At the same time, it's important that we continue to allow centres an appropriate degree of freedom and control to design their controlled assessment sessions. All this allows candidates to produce an original piece of work for presentation to be moderated. Although changes have been made to aspects of Unit 1 for 2019, certain aspects of the administration of controlled assessments which are not new do merit further attention here. Firstly, WJC EduCast controlled assessments are summative. This means that you cannot set any part of the controlled assessment until teaching is complete for that unit. For example, it's not permissible to teach LO1 in Unit 1 and follow this with the first 3 hours of controlled assessments. All learning objective content must be taught to candidates before any part of the controlled assessment can be completed. Once teaching has ended, centres may decide how best to organise the 8 hours of controlled assessment time, and this can be split over a suitable number of sessions. If the 8 hours are split, candidate notes must be stored securely between sessions. Candidates are not allowed to augment notes and resources between sessions and once the controlled assessment has started. Centres who are currently approaching controlled assessment in a staggered way must reorganise in order to meet requirements. Approach the controlled assessment much as you would prepare for an examination, which is set at the end of a taught course. Candidates are not allowed access to USB sticks or storage devices during controlled assessment. All work produced during controlled assessment must be original. Class notes or students' own notes and classwork are allowed into the controlled assessment environment, but candidates should be encouraged to take their own notes and complete their own research throughout the course. This is one way to ensure that plagiarism offences are less likely. Centres should always be aware that where class notes given to candidates are overly reliant on the content of the textbook, or where candidates are overly reliant on teacher notes, it is possible that candidates might reproduce passages from the textbook or from their notes during the controlled assessment. Both are classified as plagiarism offences. Each centre must ensure that candidates are not credited for passages reproduced directly from teacher notes or from textbooks. Candidates should be encouraged throughout the course to place work in their own words. At the centre's discretion, candidates are allowed to make a second attempt at controlled assessment before final marks are submitted to WJEC. This is classified as a fresh attempt and should be completed within the same academic year before marks are submitted. This is not to be confused with a resit. For example, a fresh attempt means that if a candidate makes a first attempt at Unit 1 in February, but wishes to attempt the task for a second time before marks are submitted in May, this is allowed. However, the candidate must use a different brief the second time. They cannot improve on their first attempt, and no teacher feedback can be provided between attempts. Where a candidate does attempt a controlled assessment task twice, if that candidate is included in the sample to be sent to WJEC for moderation, both attempts must be submitted to the moderator. Section 2. Administration of samples. Centres are reminded to ensure that each candidate signs the Criminology mark record sheet once the work is completed. The declaration must also be signed by the assessor and lead assessor in each instance. Along with the candidate samples for moderation and record sheets, centres should send one copy of the learner assignment brief selected. Centres should also include one completed copy of the quality assurance form to detail the marking and internal standardization procedures followed in relation to the sample. The Criminology mark record sheets and quality assurance form are available on our websites. Please allow candidates to word process work if practicable. Please also ensure that centre and candidate details are included on each page as a header or footer. Please ensure that the pages of each individual piece of work in the sample are securely fastened together. A simple Treasury tag will suffice. Please do not send work to the moderator on USB devices. WJEC does not accept work submitted in this way. These USB devices will be returned to the centre and paper copies requested. Centres should annotate the work in the sample to provide sufficient evidence to support the mark awarded. Annotations should be concise and should identify the assessment criteria that have been met. They could also use key phrases from the criteria to assist. For example, a clear and detailed comparison here. Annotations should always be clear and unambiguous, and concise comments to justify the mark band awarded placed in the assessor comment section of the mark record sheet for each assessment criteria. Internal standardization of marking must take place where more than one assessor is involved in marking the work of a cohort. Further details on internal standardization procedures can be found in section 5.5 of the WJEC instructions on conducting controlled assessment document. If you are registering as a consortium, please refer to this procedure document and ensure that all correct paperwork is completed and submitted to WJEC before the moderation samples. Where more than one centre is operating as a consortium, a sample from each centre involved must be included in the moderation sample, and evidence of internal standardisation across centres must be provided. Once marking and internal standardisation is complete, centres may input marks on YAMIS, the Internal Assessment Mark Input System from the WJEC. Please see your exams officer for any assistance you require on using this system. Marks may be input at any time after April the 10th each year. Once marks for each candidate are entered onto the system, please remember to press the button that submits these marks to WJEC. A sample will not be generated until these marks are submitted. Each centre must submit the work of the candidates requested by YAMIS, and centres are not permitted to substitute the work of requested candidates with the work of other candidates. And all moderation samples should be dispatched by the 15th of May in each year of submission. Consortium sample selection is slightly different and is explained in detail in the WJEC instructions on conducting controlled assessment document. Section 3, Unit 1. Please ensure that you refer to the latest version of the Criminology specification on our open website. The changes made to Unit 1 for 2019 have been introduced to give clarity to centres and candidates on the breadth of responses required and to prevent particularly overwriting for AC 1.1 and 1.2 for Unit 1, which are only worth 4 marks each. Centres should ensure when referring to the specification that they cover all content within the content column of the specification and that they also refer to the amplification column for further guidance on how to meet the demands of the mark scheme. For Unit 1 from September 2019, candidates are not permitted to see the learner assignment brief prior to the controlled assessment. There are 2 learner assignment briefs available on the Secure website, and the centre may choose the learner assignment brief which best suits their learners. Please bear in mind that for Unit 1, internet access is allowed for tasks 5 and 6 only. Where the centre chooses to split the 8 hours into shorter sessions, WJEC advises centres to allow candidates to complete Task 6 prior to Task 5 in order to satisfy the Task 5 requirement of discussing their own designed campaign. When completing Task 6, candidates must choose to design a campaign that raises awareness of a crime evident in the chosen brief. Candidates should not be familiar with the brief prior to completing Task 6, so should not be able to design their final campaign prior to the controlled assessment. Lessons for Learning Objective 3 should focus on a range of different campaigns, criminal and otherwise, that allow candidates to acquire the skills of planning, designing and justifying an effective campaign to raise awareness. These skills should then be applied to the unseen context of the brief in the controlled assessment. Centres should please note that candidates' notes for Learning Objective 3 in the controlled assessment environment should not include copies of previously planned campaign materials. Section 4, Unit 3. No changes have been made to the specification or to the briefs or tasks for Unit 3 in 2019. In contrast to Unit 1, candidates are permitted to see the learner assignment brief prior to the controlled assessment, and it can be used during teaching and learning. There are 2 learner assignment briefs available on the Secure website, and once again, the centre may choose the learner assignment brief which best suits their learners. Centres should take careful note that internet access is not permitted during the completion of this unit. As internet access and access to USB devices is not permitted during the 8 hours for the completion of the Unit 3 controlled assessment, it's not expected that hyperlinks would appear anywhere in a candidate's work. If a candidate wishes to reference other work or sources, they should do this from their notes and not reproduce entire web addresses. A range of resources are available on our open and secure websites to support the delivery of this course. All centres should carefully read the Frequently Asked Questions document published on our open website, as it contains full instructions on finding learner assignment briefs in the secure area. If you have any further questions concerning any aspect of the delivery of our Criminology qualification, please contact the subject support team here at the WJEC. We hope very much that this short video will assist you as you plan ahead for the coming academic year.